What's up, Pop Hearts TV? I'm here with Mary Lambert. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Pop Hearts TV.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to be able to sit down today with you. Your new album is out, Grief Creature. First off, wonderful job on this. I know it was a huge accomplishment for you to get this out. A huge labor of love for you. A lot of emotions went into this. A lot.
Yeah, I've been crying all day.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Good tears.
Good tears.
Yeah.
What is like the emotion now that it's released, it's out in the world, people can hear it now?
Oh, just a lot of relief.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I feel like I took I took a big poop.
Yeah.
And the poop was a baby. So I feel like I had a baby. I feel like a lot of people make that analogy, and it's just true. Like when you make an album, it feels like something's been gestating for a while, and you want to share it with the world, and you want to see it. You want to see how people respond to it. And yeah, this album is incredibly heavy. It was devastating to make. It was cathartic to make. It was healing. And now I'm in the process of like the invitation and the extension of myself and seeing how it resonates with other people and hoping that this album can be served as a tool for other people who have experiences like mine, for other people that deal with mental illness and, child abuse and sexual trauma and have experienced the things I have, and that maybe this album can serve as a tool for that. But my overwhelming feeling is I just feel joyful. I feel joyful and relieved. Yeah.
Grief Creature. We got to talk about the name here, because if you listen to it, it makes sense. Yeah. But how did you come up with that name and that is the name of this album?
I wrestled a while with trying to, and it's had different titles. I would be like, my new album, is coming, and it was like not the same title. Uh-huh. So originally it was going to be called Shame is an Ocean I Swim Across, which is a line from one of the songs, which is a line from one of my poems. So I originally wrote it as a poem, and then I released a book with the same title, and so it was very confusing for distribution to have a book and an album be titled the same thing. So I decided to change it, and I was going to call it Horror Orchid. Oh, okay. But it was a real mouthful.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to say.
It just ended up sounding kind of like Horror Orchid, which is not really it's not illustrative of the album music. So I sat with it for a while, and I just felt like, sometimes when we're in the pockets of grief, and we're in the pockets of pain and not wanting to get out of bed, for me personally, I feel less than human. I don't feel like I can function in this society when it gets bad, when I'm having a bad brain day, and I feel more like a creature than anything else.
For sure.
And I realized, ooh, hi.
We're outside.
Yeah.
You're falling.
And I realized that a lot of the album really had to do with forms of grief, and not traditional grief. I mean, I have lost people in my life, but grieving childhood, grieving past, grieving people, grieving your former self. Yeah. And so I just felt like a good a pairing of words. Also, I wanted it to be pretty clear in the title that this is going to be a heavy endeavor. Mm-hmm. Primarily what I've released up until this point is pop music, and sensitive pop music stuff I'm very proud of, but this is a different beast. Absolutely. And I wanted to make sure that my listener kind of knew what they were getting into, rather than calling it, Mary's Sunshine Happy Day.
Yes, exactly. It took you about 250 hours to complete this album. Yeah. And because the topics are so heavy and emotional, how did you prepare each time you went into the studio to get into that kind of right headspace? Because I imagine you were emotional in each session, you're crying, you're trying to get there. How did you prepare for that?
Well, it's funny because the actual writing part for me comes very naturally. That's how I write.
Right.
I write very... I write from a sacred, insular place, and it feels like, when I write, it feels like kind of just this divine connection to God. And because that process is so, is kind of otherworldly, I've been doing it for so long that's what is immediately accessed when I work through stuff. And songwriting for me has always been a form of survival and catharsis and about processing. It's a form of therapy for me. So the actual writing process is quite normal. I would say like the pop music I've released was new. It was new for me, that process of writing, of top lining or being in a writing room with strangers and just kind of trying to come up with a good song. It's not that doesn't come really naturally to me, so I had to learn that. What this album represents is my core of who I am and what comes naturally to me. I think the difficult topics and talking about my history and my pain and my trauma, where that becomes hard is in the sharing and in, this album has pretty much been done for a year, but I couldn't stop tweaking things or saying, oh, it's just not quite right, or I know I need to change this word in here, it doesn't feel right. And I realized at some point that was because I was scared to share and I wasn't quite ready for it. And so the sharing for me feels scary because all of a sudden everybody knows my stuff.
Everything,
and I've talked about my trauma and difficult things before, and I don't mind talking about it. But to do it within music and in these poems and in this way is very raw and like brutally honest in a way that I don't know that I've been before, other than my book of poetry. But it's my voice. I
actually wrote down something, and finally you said, people are walking around with a happy face every day when they're truly drowning inside. And I just that cut deep, because I feel like so many people are doing that every day. And, you never know what the pain is. I feel like that in its own vulnerability and authenticity, those are the lyrics I think that are going to really resonate with all of the people around, not just fans, but hopefully other people too.
Just sort of the duality of how we live, of what processes do I do in order to go outside and interact with people, and what ways am I performing, in what ways am I being authentically myself, am I comfortable actually being my authentic self and showing people the weak parts of me or the parts that I'm not proud of, and I'm becoming, in some way this album is forcing me to confront that and to sort of contend with situations like that. And honestly, it feels like a part of my healing process. It feels like part of therapy. So, so I'm in it. This is my big therapy day. Thanks.
And you also produced 16 of the 17 tracks here. You had, was it string quartets, program drums? Talk about that. That's pretty cool.
I love producing. I'm obsessed with it. It's all I want to do now. I realized about 3 years ago when I first started working on this album, because I went through a couple different producers to see what was sort of going to be the right fit, and it occurred to me that the only way that my voice has been heard to the public is through the lens of a straight white cis guy. And that's fine. I love straight white cis guys. They're some of my friends. But and it didn't matter how gentle or kind or generous they were. I from my experience or my background, for better or for worse, will create space for somebody else to express themselves. And I can't help it when I'm in the studio. If there's a creative producer or somebody that has a point of view, I want to give them space to express themselves.
Yeah.
And I knew with this body of work that it needed to be me start to finish. And if maybe I was a different person or had a different background or experience, I might have been able to work with a different producer and come up with sort of a cooler, hipper sound to achieve this, and still been able to stay, close to my message or what I was wanting to say. But I'm not that person, and I needed to be in isolation. I needed to be alone for all of this. So my friend Jeremy Kays he owns a recording studio out in the peninsula of Washington in Sequim, and he engineered this record and was basically, it was incredible to be like, I need I need it to be silent for 3 hours, or like, can you leave so I can perform this or get this out, or can I sit at the computer for a couple hours and figure this out myself, or can you play me 50 snares and I'll figure out which one I like, and like to work with somebody that has that kind of patience. It felt great to be around somebody that could help facilitate that, and to just feel like I can hear myself in the sound sonically, like it's me in the reverb. Yes. It's me in the synth sound I chose, and nobody can take that from me. Right. And I think that's at the end of the day, no matter what happens with this album, I don't know if it'll go anywhere. I don't really care. There's no way I've lost. Mm-hmm. I got to create my masterpiece.
Yes.
And I know that it is affecting to my fan base and people that have experienced things like me, and that's all I care about.
Yeah.
And so anything else beyond that is just a bonus.
Absolutely. Yeah. You actually got the chance to reunite with Macklemore, who you did Same Love with. Yeah. You actually wrote the song. So you did House of Mirrors with him. Talk about that, because there's thoughtful messaging throughout that song. So talk about that, being able to reunite with him. How was that?
I love Macklemore so much. We've been friends now for a while, and we talked about doing another song a couple years ago. Just nothing really felt right, and I sent him a track from the album. And honestly, he sent me a text, and I was just immediately just devastated, because he said, "I'm sorry, Mary, this just doesn't feel right." And I realized what he said was, this is your song and this is your voice, and I don't want to take space on that. Let's write something together. Let's write something new. And I just thought it was so generous and fair, and kind of him to extend that to me. And so Macklemore and Josh Karp, Budo, and I worked in his studio last winter, and we came up with the song in about a couple hours, and Josh Karp did the sort of initial production on it, and then I took it to the studio in Sequim, and I just remember like sitting at the console and like tweaking stuff, and then I was like, I'm producing Macklemore right now. I was like, this is badass. That's cool.
That's awesome. Is there anybody else who you would love to write for?
So many people.
So many people?
Yeah. Oh. To write for, or like write with?
Both. Produce or duet with? Like anybody? Like anything.
I would love to produce Adele. I'd love to produce something with Sarah Bareilles. I think that'd be really neat. I want to sing with and write with an artist named Liam Havas, and Mahalia. I think she's amazing. And who else? I just want to do really interesting things with lots of different people. The Dixie Chicks, or Tori Amos, or Jewel, or I can just see myself like working with lots of different peoples in different capacities. I'm just someday.
Yeah. Do you ever find it hard to write for other people because you want to use like things from your personal life, or do you just kind of put yourself kind of like your personal things outside of when you're writing for other people?
You kind of have to draw on your own personal experiences in order to I think, at least for me, in order to be a good writer, I use my experience and put it through the filter of someone else's life or their identity. And so, when I write for other people or different projects, I like to think of it in that way of like, okay, how it's a practice in empathy. So it's not necessarily like compartmentalizing my own experience or identity or life. It's how do my experiences inform my creative process so I can be a conduit and understand what this person's experience is.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a mutual friend in common, Mr. Jason Eichler.
Oh, I love Jason.
You do. So I talked to him before I was going to interview you, and I said, what should I ask her? And of course, in Jason fashion, he goes, well, obviously you have to ask her about singing at my wedding.
Yeah, that's very Jason.
It's a very Jason answer if you all know Jason. So that was probably your first time performing Write You a Song, correct?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So
it was the premiere.
What was it like getting that song out for the first time, even if it was just at Jason's wedding?
I loved it. I was a little nerve-wracking because that was the only song that I couldn't really remember the piano part, and so I had to teach myself the piano part because I've been working on this album for so long. Some of the instrumentals that I wrote were like 4 or 5 years ago, and I have to be like, okay, what did I do there? Because I didn't write out charts or anything. I probably should have. And so I was really nervous. Yeah. I was really nervous for Jason's wedding because I was like, this is their song. Yeah. I'm gonna sing the song like right after they kiss, and like, oh my God, like this has to be perfect. And I think I did good.
Yes. He loved it. I was so sad I had to miss it. So bummer.
And it was gorgeous.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
I was
on like this text thread with like 20 of the people that were there. So I was like keeping up through all your texts. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out on all the fun right now. So jealous. But anyways. And then last night you performed at the Grammy Museum.
Yeah.
How was that performing for everybody for the first time, like pretty much the songs on this album?
Yeah, I did like a release party in Seattle a couple days ago, and I wanted to do it with Mike because Seattle's my home. It's home. But this felt really intimate and special, and also kind of full circle in a way, like doing something with the Grammys.
Yeah.
When I feel like when we performed at the Grammys with Madonna, it was like I would say like this glimmering moment in my career, and for I think a lot of us, and it was just so freaking special.
Yeah.
And so to see, and there's like a little blurb about us in the Grammy Museum, and so my picture's in the Grammy Museum, and I'm like,
amazing.
So it's just neat to perform there, and Scott, who moderated it, he was just fantastic at interviewing, and my friend Melissa is a harpist, and so she plays harp all over the album, and so we got to do some of these songs, just her and I, just piano and harp, and singing, and we were trying out some neat stuff. So it's just figuring out different ways to express the studio version, like how does that work? I'm still figuring it out, and because so many of the topics are really heavy, it feels important to be intentional and careful and deliberate with each of these performances. So Seattle and LA are the only performances that I've done of this album, and I don't have any planned. I'm not opposed to doing them. I just want it to be slow and careful, and be careful with my brain and and my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question here. We got to talk about High School Musical because we have a lot of young fans who watch Pop Hearts TV. Talk about the song. How did that come about? And anything you can tell us about, you know, what went into that? Anything about the song?
So I should start with the bad news. They didn't use it for this season. We just found out about a month ago that it didn't fit with the character anymore.
Okay.
But they're going to use it for the second season.
Okay.
So just you'll stay in suspense. But the promo and the previews for High School Musical just seem out of this world. And I want to start watching it because I know Disney Plus is out. But they reached out to me. Disney reached out to me, and part of it was they were working on this song, and my songs were references for the song that the songwriters were working on.
Way.
And they thought, well, why don't we just reach out to her? And so I flew out to LA, and we came up with the song in about a day and a half, and I'm really proud of it. It's really good. It's one of my best pop writing moments. And it was it's just neat to try different ways of writing and to approach the craft. And I feel lucky to have experienced it. So next season. Yes.
Awesome. Well, we will look forward to that. In the meantime, everyone, make sure to follow Mary Lambert Sings on Instagram and on Twitter, right?
On Twitter, it's just Mary Lambert.
Mary Lambert. All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. Of course. Oh my God. I love her, you guys. Go follow her. She's the best.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.